Go. Good morning. Who do we have here this morning? Gracie. Gracie, I love your tagline. Loving God with all my heart, mind, and strength. Pro-Israel, the apple of God's eyes. Baruch Hashem Am Yisrael Chai. Gracie, pleasure having you here this morning. Thanks so much for joining. And I love that tagline of yours. Definitely a good one. All right, we're going to get started, Gracie. Just recently, the Israeli Foreign Ministry created a video. And in that video, it was basically bashing the way journalists reported the last Gaza war last summer. Good morning, Boker Tov, Gracie. No problem. You could say either one. So this morning we're talking about Israel and journalism, and it's hitting the fan, as they say. Because just last week, the Israeli Foreign Ministry produced a video basically showing how the journalists who covered the Gaza conflict, again, what was the Gaza conflict a year ago, where Hamas was shooting thousands of rockets on the Israeli civilian population. Thousands of rockets, okay? Now, it's not just that they were shooting thousands of rockets on the Israeli civilian population, but they were using their own civilians as human shields. They were shooting the rockets from homes, from hospitals, from schools. They were making sure people stood on rooftops of these buildings where missiles were being shot from in order to hit Israeli civilians as Israel. All right, just going to say hello. Who else is here? Hello, Wes. Welcome. Hello, JD, our dog. Welcome. Any case, so we are talking about how even while the Gaza conflict last year, it was the Arabs who used their own civilian population as human shields. Okay? Civilian shields shooting rockets at Israel from hospitals, from schools, from buildings. That's what they were doing. Yet, if you checked out all of the newspapers, the mass media, online, MSNBC, CNN, Telegraph, Guardian, all the media reports were bashing Israel for hurting or killing civilians, the Arab civilians in Gaza. Again, don't trust me. Google it. Go Google the news reports of the Gaza conflict at the time. All the reports were bashing Israel. None of the reports were talking about how Hamas were using their own civilian population as human shields in order to then hurt and kill Israeli civilians, the civilian population. So there was a double wrong, a double whammy against Hamas, shooting rockets to kill Israeli civilians and using their own innocent civilians as human shields. 1, 2, double whammy. How much of this was reported by the media? Almost nothing. All the media was focused on bashing Israel because civilians were killed in Gaza. Not understood at all. And so just last week, the Israeli Foreign Ministry created a video highlighting this very clearly. And anyone who follows me, I'll post the link on YouTube, on my Twitter feed later, at AviAbelow. You could see the video for yourself. And the video shows how journalists were talking about how everything is fine and the Gaza people are fine and they're doing whatever they do, and Israel is the bad guy, and Israel is the one hurting the civilians in Gaza. Very true information, verified information, factual information. The journalists ignored the war crimes of Hamas, of the Arabs, and instead they made up war crimes about Israel. That was not war crimes. According to all international law, Israel defending its civilian population and the way it defended the Israeli civilian population was totally legal. Israel did even more than was required of any country in order to defend its civilian population. Gracie, thanks so much for your tweet right now about streaming about this stream. Appreciate it. So let's go to today. Today's headlines in the press. The Foreign Press Association is attacking the Israeli Foreign Ministry. They are attacking the Israeli Foreign Ministry because they were called out for basically being frauds. That they are fraudulent in their reporting. They're being fraudulent in their journalistic integrity. So they came out swinging at the Israeli Foreign Ministry, saying the Israeli Foreign Ministry has bigger issues to deal with in the world today. They should not be slamming and bashing journalists who are doing their job. In addition, they are, again, this is the journalist, the Foreign Journalist Association, basically saying that the Israeli Foreign Ministry is ignoring the fact that over 2,000 Gazans were killed, while only 71 Israelis were killed. And here's the kicker. In that one line, the Foreign Media Association shows us how naked they are. Naked in their integrity. Because that one fact, just focusing on the amount of people killed in the conflict, bears no resemblance of the conflict itself. Why? Because we go back to what we started talking about. Who was being attacked on the Israeli side? Civilians. Hamas were using their own civilians as human shields. Human shields. So Israel, in trying to defend herself and her civilians, was trying her best not to harm civilians. But I ask you, how does a country defend itself and trying to shoot and stop rocket fire from the enemy if that enemy is using their own civilians as human shields? How? How? So Israel did everything in its power to drop leaflets, to make phone calls to the population, to the civilian population in Gaza. Israel, the Israeli army, had a war room making phone calls to the civilians living in the areas we were about to bomb out the rockets. How many armies in the world do you know who do that? How often does the American army, the British army, any army make phone calls to people who live in the buildings near the terrorists, where the terrorists are about to shoot rockets, and warn them to leave because they're about to be bombed? Israel did everything in its power to save as many lives in Gaza as possible. No other army in the world does that. And yet, the journalists have the audacity to call out the Israeli Foreign Ministry for showing how their integrity is shot, and they themselves in their own letter to the Foreign Ministry, by highlighting 2,000 Gazans were killed versus 70 Israelis killed, and therefore Israel is in the wrong. No, journalists, you are in the wrong. You are using that fact bears no resemblance on the conflict. How do you stop violence? You stop violence by stopping the people from being violent. How do you stop violence from people who use their own civilian population as human shields? Human shields. Again, they were shooting rockets from hospitals. The Arabs were shooting rockets from schools, shooting rockets from homes. How is a country supposed to defend itself? Israel did everything possible to defend itself, to stop the rocket fire, to protect civilians of the enemy population, but you don't think civilians are going to die if they're being used as human shields? Unfortunately, they are, but who's responsible for their death? The 2,000 Arab deaths in Gaza are 110% the responsibility of Hamas and the Arabs and the Arab world and the journalists who did not call that out. The journalists and the politicians played along with the game. They allowed Hamas to use their civilian populations as human shields. The journalists and the politicians of the world, by not calling out Hamas, by instead focusing on blaming Israel, they are enablers and partners in the human rights crimes that Hamas were doing, not just against Israel, but doing against their own civilian populations. And yet, the Foreign Media Press Association has the audacity to call out the Israeli Foreign Ministry for calling them out on their nakedness and no resemblance of journalistic integrity. It's crazy. The level of, some people will call it ignorance, some people will call it anti-Semitism. What I would call it is evil. The amount of evil that exists today on the journalist level and in the political level, in not standing up for basic rights of the people affected in this conflict. And the ones who are affected more than the Israelis are the Arabs. They are being abused abused by their own leadership, and the world is silent. I'm just going to take some comments here. Gracie, thanks so much for calling people to tune in. Ha'ivri, David Ha'ivri, Boker, Tov, pleasure having you here this morning. Well, today. Israel is the only nation in the world that takes pride in being abnormal. David, great comments. Basically, what David is trying to say, I'm going to go a little into depth on that because it's a very good piece of information. Just last week, and we spoke about this last week, there were army generals from around the world who called out Israel for being too moral of an army because the level of morality that the Israeli army acts on is too high that no other Western army, democratic army, can attain that level of morality. And they were calling out Israel for being too moral of an army because we're putting the standard too high for any other army in the world. And that's the issue. Israel, you can actually go into a whole theological debate whether Israel's being moral or too moral, because it's not always doing what's best to defend its own civilians, because we're always thinking about defending the civilians of the enemy population. And hence, David Ha'ivri is saying Israel is the only nation in the world that takes pride in being abnormal. We are abnormal in being so moral. And we will discuss this throughout history, how moral Israel is and its consequences. In the meantime, there we go. Gracie, the media makes Israel look like they were in the wrong. 100%. And they are the ones who are wrong. And as we said before, the media are partners in the human rights crimes because they are enabling the human rights to take place by the Arabs because they are not stopping it. They're not saying that it's wrong. They're not stopping it. Hence, these journalists who pride themselves on their integrity are actually enablers for the human rights crimes that take place in the Arab world. Very simple. David Avery has another comment. Hasbara's response to the biased media is an overkill and counterproductive. So that's something that I'm going to deal with on a separate level with David Avery. Could be. We could denounce it. But in the meantime, it's clear that when the journalists are so strong in one, misreporting everything about Israel, and two, on the defensive, I think it's great that the foreign ministry made this video calling out the journalists, and the fact that the foreign press are responding, I think it's great. Let them respond. Let them show little by little they're burying themselves in a hole, and hopefully, as time goes on, more and more journalists will believe to pay attention to the truth because they don't want to be seen as losing all of their journalistic integrity. I could be wrong. 100%. The justice is not with me, and I make mistakes as well. But I believe when someone does something wrong, especially when something does something wrong, that then it affects humanity. Because the fact that journalists are disregarding the true human rights that take place, they are in a sense enabling it, not just to be enabling it to take place here in the Israel-Arab conflict. They're enabling it to take place everywhere because they are not reporting other things that are taking place where other people are being abused because of their ignoring of the situation. Hasbro, okay, another one. David Avery. Hasbro is obsessed with explaining our right to defend ourselves. The state just needs to do what needs to be done. I agree with both points, not one over the other, because unfortunately there's so much information that people don't know about Israel today. We need to do what's right, but at the same time we also need to explain, because there's so many people who believe, they're just believing what they're being told in the media and by their politicians, and it's wrong. They're being fed wrong information. They're therefore given across wrong. They make the wrong decisions, thinking that they're being moral, yet they're making the immoral decisions based on misinformation. Hence, it is our responsibility to take advantage of not doing what is correct, but yes, explaining why it is correct. The wrong thing to do is for Israel not to do what is correct because of misinformation and wrong decisions people are making because of the misinformation journalists are giving them. So I think it is our responsibility to explain and take advantage to give people the correct information, because they will have the wrong information and hence make the wrong decisions, even though Israel's doing the right thing. But at the same time, Israel has to do the right thing to defend herself, and not do the right thing because we are afraid of public opinion. So that's today's Israel Straight Talk. I will post on Twitter the link to watch this video that the Israel Foreign Ministry made. I will post the reaction from the foreign media press blasting the Israeli Foreign Ministry's video, and you decide for yourself who's in the right. And keep on becoming more informed about what's truly happening here, following the facts, seeing through the hypocrisy of the journalists who are not reporting all the facts of what's going on. And little by little, show that information with other people you know so they can be more informed in making the correct decisions for themselves about the world, about the journalists, about the reports they're reading in the news on a day-to-day basis. Gracie, could you explain what Hasbara is? I got called this on Twitter. Sure, 1 second. And David Avery, thanks, Avi. Good seeing you here. David, pleasure seeing you here. Looking forward to seeing you in the Shomron. David's a good friend up in the Shomron. You are all invited to join us. And I'm in the Judean Hills. David Avery's in the Shomron Hills, Samarian Hills. These are the true biblical heartlands of the world, not just of the Jewish people, not just of Israel. You're all invited to come visit us. We have plenty of things to show you and to see the truth on the ground. In terms of Gracie's comment, could you explain what Hasbara is? I get called this on Twitter all the time. Great question, Gracie. Hasbara is a Hebrew word that means to explain. So it's basically explaining. So in Israel, that term refers to Israel explaining herself to the world, right? Explain it. Public diplomacy. Basically, Hasbara is public diplomacy. Very simple. So in the Twitter land and in the Facebook world and all over the place, there are places who they say, this person is a Hasbara troll. What are they saying? They're saying that basically this man is someone trying to defend Israel and he's lying. Well, no. They're using our own terminology against us. Hasbara is just explaining ourselves. It's public diplomacy. They could think that what someone's saying to explain Israel is lying or not, but they're the ones who do not have enough facts to defend themselves against the true facts, against the true narrative of what's going on here. So anytime they try to shut down a conversation, whenever they want to shut down them being outed for knowing the wrong information, they shout to writing, that's a Hasbara troll, basically saying, he's lying. But no, the fact someone screams he's a Hasbara or he or she is a Hasbara troll, they're the ones who are being caught on the lie, and they don't have enough information to defend themselves. Hence, they just deflect the conversation and go name calling. That's it for today, Israel Straight Talk. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great day. Keep on standing up for truth and justice. 1 second, Gracie again. I win debates when I get called that. That's exactly it. Because when someone's calling that, they're basically saying they don't have enough information to counter what you're saying. So you just say back, I guess you don't have the right information to counter me, and hence you're just running out of the conversation. Keep on the good fight. Keep on standing up for truth, justice, humanity, and Israel, Gracie. Because standing up for Israel is not just standing to defend the Jewish state. It's standing up for all of humanity. Because all of humanity is on the front line right now. Israel are the ones fighting on that front line for all of humanity. And this is the fight that needs to be fought in our generation. And anyone who doesn't realize it is missing what's really going on around them, and they're going to be eaten up by it if they don't stand up. Thank you so much for joining us. You're all invited back anytime. Follow at AviAbelow here at Twitter or at Meerkat. Keep on standing up for truth, justice, Israel, and humanity. Have a great day, everybody.